Hey, good afternoon. Welcome to the ICC Region 1 Facebook page. And if you're not watching this live and you're listening to our podcast on the ICC Region 1 radio, we're available on multiple platforms, anywhere from Google Podcasts to Apple Podcasts, and also maybe our home Spotify. But if you're listening to us, welcome. International Code Council Region 1 was established in 2014. And we are made up of 3 states, California, Hawaii, and Nevada. That includes 32 chapters and a lot of code officials that we try to spotlight through our efforts here. We're dedicated to excellence in the education and engagement to promote a safer environment by bringing individuals like myself and Justin together. This forum was designed to highlight individuals and chapters that make up our region. And today we have Justin Edson he is the Neighborhood Business and Services Division Manager with the City of Monrovia in California. He's also a regional representative for the California Code Enforcement Officers Association. I want to thank him for joining us. If you have any questions for Justin throughout this conversation, please leave them in the chat. We've got a chat going. Also, too, don't feel bad to maybe shoot me an email or a text message if you've got those means available to you. And if you would like to maybe guest star in an upcoming forum or have any suggestions of people we need to reach out to, please feel free to send me a message or find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. I don't think we're on Instagram quite yet. So with that, Justin, welcome. I'm glad that you could make it. I'm glad we could finally connect.
Yes, thanks, Tim.
Well, I'm glad that you're here. So before we really dive too much into the meat and potatoes of code enforcement and kind of the things that you do, can you provide us with your background in the area that you serve?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Justin. I'm currently the Neighborhood Business Services Manager for the City of Monrovia. It's a beautiful small town in LA County, Southern California. And I'm very happy to be here. I've been here about a year. Prior to that, I was an acting building manager as well as a code enforcement manager at another city. And I'm ICC certified as a code enforcement administrator and a code enforcement officer, as well as zoning inspector and property maintenance inspector. And then I'm also certified through our state association, which is California Association of Code Enforcement Officers, or CASIO. And I serve on their board of directors. And I'm also president of the National Code Enforcement Officer Safety Foundation, which is recognized by ICC as a supporting organization and a preferred education provider. So that's a little bit about my background. The city I work for is very small. We work in community development with code enforcement, business licensing, planning, and building. And so we get to work very closely with our counterparts here.
Okay, good. You mentioned being a preferred provider through ICC and the other organization. Can you describe maybe some of the things that in some of the trainings that you offer through that organization?
Yeah, sure. So CEOSF, or the Code Enforcement Officer Safety Foundation, is a national nonprofit and it's a charity. So unlike other associations and groups, we really focus on using the funds that are raised to promote officer safety in the country. And that's why ICC partnered with us and we entered into an MOU. And so we have a really close relationship with ICC besides just providing education. And so the foundation has launched a national certification program called the Code Official Safety Specialist, or COSS. And it's made up of 5 classes focused on officer safety for building inspectors, fire inspectors, and code enforcement. And it's 15 total hours of training. It's very comprehensive, comes with digital workbooks for each of the 5 classes. And so the goal of that was our board of directors made up of building officials, managers, and different folks from across the country. And we just wanted to put officer safety as at the forefront of the discussion. And the training part actually came around second nature to it. We started about a year ago, and we just wanted to be a resource. And our website, codeofficersafety.org, focuses on tracking incidents across the country. And I had spoken a few months ago to the California, I think it's the Southern California Association with the Fire Prevention Officers,
Hmm.
and I talked to them, and they brought up how they've had incidents and they didn't know where to report that, or that there was a database for that. So that's why we started the foundation. But then we decided, well, hey, there's not enough quality training out there to keep inspectors safe. So we worked with a gentleman named Scott Kirshner, who helped develop the curriculum for this, and we
Hmm.
came up with this 5-course certification program, and it's been a hit. We have actually in our current class that we're about to wrap up next month, we have directors, we have building officials, fire inspectors. Actually, one of the fire inspectors from Ventura County is in there, but we have a bunch of different people across the country that are in our current class, and it's
Wow.
been a true hit. Everybody loves it.
Yeah, I mean, that's good to be able to pull code professionals from across the spectrum and have that conversation. And I'll be honest, I didn't realize there was a database, and it's good to know that. And so I would imagine that most of the people that are probably listening to this aren't aware of that database either. And that actually, I'll try to share that in our show notes just so that way everybody's aware of it. And I do think it's important. I think that I talked with Daryl Revere probably a month or two ago, and we kind of talked about some code enforcement officer safety. And I'm sure you're working with him on some state legislation here in the state of California to address some of those officer safety things, because I do think that it is forgotten about, and I do think that to highlight it is very important because there are occasions where that can happen, and we don't want it to happen. Obviously, we always try to err on the side of good customer service, but we just want to make sure that when we're out doing our duties that we're safe as well. And so it's good to hear that there are resources out there and training available for people to have maybe better situational awareness. Can you provide us any update on some of that legislation that I know that there was the Code Enforcement Officers Association of California where they were working on some legislation. I would imagine you were part of that as well. And maybe an update in regards to that legislative effort?
Yeah, that is a historic moment for us that came through last week. So it's fresh off the press. And I have to start just by commending KCO as a whole, but especially Daryl as the president of KCO this last year. He made this a focus, officer safety, taking care of the code enforcement officers across California, but then also the legislative committee of KCO. They have a team focused on pushing legislation. They have a lobbyist, and the chair of that is Matt Silver, and he really had a huge impact on getting this bill across the finish line. And so it got signed into law by the governor last Thursday. So
Okay.
now it's official. And what it essentially does is it adds Penal Code 829.7 to the California Penal Code, and it's very simple, one sentence that says that every jurisdiction needs to evaluate the duties that are assigned to the code enforcement officers and prepare code enforcement officer safety standards for those duties. So I
Okay.
know across the different jurisdictions, we do different things. I mean, you could go to one city and they deal with unpermitted construction and property maintenance, where
Hmm.
another city might deal with homeless camps and marijuana dispensaries. So there's a lot of variety there, but this bill is the first in the country, and I know other states are watching this and they're looking at as a template. But yeah, that got signed in last week, and so now HR departments and cities are thinking, what do we do with it? What do we need to do moving forward to meet and comply with this code section? And so our national foundation, the Code Enforcement Officer Safety Foundation, actually pushed out a press release with minimum standards that we recommend on the national level. And so we've been sharing that across the spectrum. And I'm already hearing from different agencies that their HR departments are saying, hey, what do we need to do to comply? And they're
Hmm.
starting to have conversations with code enforcement staff on how do we, make sure that you guys have all the safety that you need doing the
Right.
job that you do.
So, talking about the foundation again, and the training, the officer safety classes that you offer, can you really, you mentioned that there are 5 classes. Can you describe some of the curriculum involved with that? If let's say there's somebody from, the public that is watching this that is responsible for shaping some of the policy as it relates back to, their code enforcement office or safety platform or their provisions within their municipal code. Can you describe what those 5 classes are and how that might benefit or meet those requirements in the new legislation?
Yeah, sure. So the 5 classes, it's in a series for a reason, the way it's lined up. But the first class is tactical mindset. So it's really about how you go into situations and how you think. That's actually, I think, one of the favorites among the class. The second one is fear management. How do you manage your fears when you're in a stressful situation? It gives you breathing techniques. There's different things that are discussed to really manage your fear and stressful situations. And then we have the third class, which is verbal de-escalation, which I think was a phenomenal class. I think it's needed across the board for any profession. And then we actually just did the fourth class today, which is the 3 phases to a contact. So how you interact with the public. And then the last class we're doing in a couple weeks is surviving a violent encounter. And that's going to give you tips and things to kind of work yourself through some violent situations. So that's why we have fire inspectors and building inspectors in there. We actually have one county here in California that sent nearly 50 of their inspectors into this first class that we're doing. And I just got an email from probably the largest city, if I'm not mistaken, in California, reached out to me and they want to send their entire division through this program. So the conversations we've been having with a lot of these agencies is even before the governor signed this bill, they were already reaching out to us because they saw that the certification course could be the foundation to a minimum standard, is send staff through the class, get certified in officer safety, and that would be a minimum standard. And so we're encouraging that because it is very good education for staff to have. So that's what we're looking at. A lot of cities are seeing that this 5 course series is the minimum standard to meet the bill.
Okay, perfect. Well, that's outstanding that there are resources. So that way provides a good bridge in a sense. Once you've adopted the legislation to then know where you need to go from there and have those resources available is outstanding. Because I'm sure a lot of jurisdictions are starting now to review what they have and what's available to them. I know that when I first began my career, I began in law enforcement, and I had a lot of that training, which not to say that I've used any of those defensive tactics or firearms training or anything like that. Maybe when I was in law enforcement I did, but I will say that it provided me with more situational awareness because I was able to encounter some of those high stress situations in a controlled environment, and then been able to know how I'll react in that stress. And I will say that was one of the things that definitely prepared me for my position. And I think that really has kind of helped me throughout the course of my career. And through that process, understanding those high stress situations and being able to know how to articulate my position, even when it's stressful, because I'm sure that you understand that there are times where, as you've said, managing that fear, but also identifying some of that stress, because it does get stressful, and I think it's stressful for everybody. And what do you do, and how do you articulate it? How do you remain calm? Because there are some times where if you remain calm, it helps kind of smooth out that that situation and makes it a little bit easier. And for me, I try to sell fire safety, so I really try to work on working with them as much as we can to work towards that voluntary compliance. But no, that's fantastic.
And I was going to add that part of this too is we've been speaking at a lot of ICC chapter meetings, and so we do a brief presentation to the different chapter meetings just to give them a breakdown of officer safety and things that they should be aware of. But we're actually right now, we've coordinated a training with the ICC chapter of Yosemite, and we're putting together our 5-class series through a personalized training course with them. So we're working with ICC chapters directly to give their members this training, and I think that's been a great coordination effort too, is not just offering it to the masses like we do, but we can coordinate these specialized trainings with the ICC chapters so that their members can get access and the training for officer safety.
No, that's fantastic. Um, Kind of shifting gears here, we talked a little bit about your background, but kind of like to expand on that. We all take a lot of different pathways to our career. As I mentioned, I have a background in law enforcement. Granted, coming out of the academy, I was always in as a fire marshal or, as a deputy state fire marshal. But with that being said, we've all take those, kind of. Sometimes it's a very jagged line to get where you need to go. Can you describe your path and any notable experience that you had that have shaped you as a code enforcement professional?
Yeah, I think like you, I've kind of had a jagged line. I actually started as a teenager as a police explorer, and I was a captain of the program for many years, and they hired me as a cadet through college. And I was going through that trajectory, and I was promoted to full-time CSO at the time, and started applying, and I ended up getting a job offer to be a police officer. But at that time, I recently had a new young family, and so I did some deep thought, and a friend of mine told me about code enforcement, and I'd never heard of it really before then. I just never heard the term. And he told me, oh, check out KCO, look at the classes. And I started getting into it. I put myself through, used my vacation time, got certified in California, and then I started to apply. And I ended up getting my first job for a very small city where they needed somebody on the weekends and at night, dealing with bars and CUP enforcement. And so
Hmm.
nobody wanted it that had experience. So I got lucky, and I put 2 years in there, built up my experience, and then I ended up becoming a supervisor. And then shortly thereafter, I became a manager. And so I kind of stumbled upon it. I mean, I was going that law enforcement route, and code enforcement just kind of called my name out, and I got into it. And then since being in code enforcement, I was also interested in fire inspection and building. And so I actually went through the 4 modules for Fire Inspector 1, and
Okay.
so I did that down here in Southern California, and then I'm looking at the building side of things. So I got one test left to get my building official cert,
Oh,
and I've
wow.
been studying for that. And especially in my last role when I was an acting building manager, running the building department, permits, and stop work orders, and dealing with developers and so forth.
Hmm.
I felt I needed to really build up my knowledge so I could be good in that role. So I've kind of taken an interest in the building side more recently. So I think it's important for us to continue to learn, and try to be experts across the board in everything that we deal with. So I think certification's great. I think all the certs that ICC offers really benefits us, keeps us sharp. So yeah, I kind of stumbled into this career, but it's become a knack, and I've really enjoyed it, and I look forward to doing it for the rest of my career.
Well, and I think that you highlighted something really important that I think many of us in the code industry really understand is there's a lot of overlap. Like you mentioned, going through the fire prevention one series through the state fire training, also then getting building certifications, and I know for myself that we have a good relationship with our code enforcement office and really building department. We have to work together. I mean, I really do think that it is a collaborative effort, and that through that collaborative effort, we're able to achieve a better outcome. But I do think that knowing the different areas that each one of us covers and some of those important things is definitely essential. And so you mentioned how you've served as a building manager. So how do you work to engage with other code professionals, build those relationships with others, maybe outside of your organization or maybe outside of your division?
Yeah, I think that's so important for what we do. Is I always like the term tearing down silos, and
Hmm.
I think I've been at cities like the one I'm at right now where there's no silos. We all work very collectively together. But I've been, especially in that role as a building manager, I had to work to tear down those silos. And for me, it's just building up relationships. It's, we help other departments out, they help us out. And so when you become one-sided and you put a wall up, people don't want to work with you. And so my goal was, how do we make things more efficient? How do we help each other? So, like you said, there's things that we helped the fire inspectors out with when they had code issues. There's things that building needed help on with enforcing stop work orders and red tags. So it was just building up that teamwork and having meetings and saying, hey, how can we help each other? And so what I did at that city was I created a mid-management working group where the fire marshal, the building manager, myself, and police and community services got together once a month, and we talked about city issues and how we can help each other, and that really helped the communication. So I think every city I've been at, we've always had great communication, and it's really important to have that teamwork between the fire team, the building staff, us, and code enforcement, and we can help each other out with all these difficult cases.
Yeah, I think that communication is essential to everything that we do. And how do you do that? Do you do it over a cup of coffee, or do you try to just send off a bunch of emails? And I'll be honest, I have not found email correspondence to be very effective. And so picking up the phone many times is probably better than not doing anything at all, or also maybe engaging in these online platforms, especially with COVID and the pandemic, and trying to figure out how you do that. But I do think that meeting and discussing is always essential, and building that rapport and those relationships, especially when stuff does get challenging, to be able to have those people that you can work with to hopefully address those challenges is a good thing. Talking about the pandemic, there's been a lot of changes in the industry. We've seen a lot of digital changes, especially. What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen, and what are some changes that you've implemented that have really become effective, especially maybe in addressing this pandemic?
Yeah, it was very interesting. When the pandemic started, it was right when I was appointed to be the acting building manager, and there's already some issues that I needed to work on without the pandemic getting involved. But then when the pandemic hit, I had to, deal with staffing concerns, and then also how do we work with the public to still keep the work moving forward. And so I think, like a lot of cities that I've spoken to, a lot of things went digital. So building inspections could be done through FaceTime and virtual, where
Mm-hmm.
if it's a very simple project, an inspector can talk to somebody through FaceTime. If it's exterior, they were still able to do the inspections. And so we did a lot of things digitally, and we took photos in as proof of compliance. And then with the permit side of things, taking plans in on a digital side. So people would drop off thumb drives, or we would share a Dropbox link, and they would upload their plans, and then we'd route it to our plan check. So a lot of things went completely digital. Now that we've reopened, we now still take things over the counter, and we do in-person inspections. So there's been some modifications that have kept up since we started, but for the most part, we're kind of getting back to the normal swing of things. But I think we learned that on the technology side, there's things that make us more efficient, and we just need to tweak it a little bit, and I think it'll make us better in the long run. So it's always a struggle dealing with software in the first place, but I think we see the potential for it going forward is sticking with the digital side versus hard copies.
Yeah, I will say that it helped bring some efficiencies that maybe some of us didn't really realize that we could have available to us, and I know that that's something that we've also looked at too, is digital plan reviews, and we increased our efforts in regards to into those digital plan reviews, because there for a while we didn't know whether or not paper plans were something like contact would be. You could get contract the illness through contact, and so we did go digital, and I will say that that was a bit of a learning curve for us, and we were already doing it to a certain degree, but when you had to do it all by that, then you had to try to address some of those some of those issues. Also, we implemented a online payment portal, which we didn't have before, and that provided us with an ability to work with people that maybe weren't in the area, and also too probably helped with our customer service for folks that might have to travel. I think being able to accept online plans and do the payments remotely, I think definitely helped. We haven't quite gotten into the digital inspections yet. I hope to get there soon, maybe on some of the easier things, some of the, lack of a better term, the black and white things that we always get involved with. So we talk about maybe some of those changes. How do you stay up to date with different things? And we know things change all the time, especially in our industry. Sometimes they move faster than others. But how do you stay up to date? How do you get involved with different things? And I know that you're involved at the state and national level, but how do you stay up to date with all those things?
I think the easiest answer is networking. I feel building up the contacts of neighboring cities and even other cities across the state, having people in certain industries, they can help share information with you. I mean, there's times that people reach out to me and say, "Hey, did you hear about this? Or what's going on with what is your city doing regarding this change?" And so it's just sharing of ideas, whether it's an email or it's a phone call. So I talk to building officials or code enforcement managers, and we just share ideas and what we've heard. I think the other part of it too is just the trainings, whether it's the ICC chapters and when they host some type of training topic or things that you might see on social media, things that ICC shares or the different organizations. It's just being aware of what's going on in the industry. So I think networking and then also just following different groups so that hopefully you can learn something that by being a part of that. Otherwise, if you just stayed in a cave, you won't really be paying attention to anything that comes around. So
Right.
I think to be successful in this industry, you really have to network. You have to ask questions and build up friendships, and that way you can help each other out. And I'm appreciative that there's other building officials and staff across other cities that answer my questions because I don't know the
Right.
answer. I'm not an expert in everything, so I try to do the same thing for them if I have an answer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You mentioned networking. I guess maybe the flip side of the coin would be mentoring. And how do you interact with, different folks that you mentioned that when you first began your career in code enforcement, it was due to maybe somebody saying, "Hey, have you ever looked at this?" And I would imagine that that person might have been a mentor of yours at one time. And so, how do you engage in mentoring and helping in staff development, being a leader in your organization, and bringing people up and mentoring those maybe outside of your organization? I know that a lot of times I will try to mentor those inside and outside my organization, but how do you engage in that?
I think mentoring is so important. I think no matter what your title is, being able to mentor and coach somebody to become stronger is one of the most important aspects that we can do in our profession. You're passing on knowledge, but you're also trying to help them become better at what they do. And I've been fortunate with some great building officials and directors that I've worked for. One of my prior directors, who's now a city manager at a neighboring city, she gave me a lot of great advice, and I learned from her, and she became my mentor even to this day because she has really good leadership skills, and I try to do the same thing for my team. I don't like to use the word staff or employee. I call it my team, and I'm a team member of that team. And sometimes I have to make critical decisions, and I have to call the shots, but I encourage the teamwork and the communication. I think being a mentor or a leader um, is not about exerting power and
Mhm.
bragging about titles. It's about how many people can you build up to be successful, and it's not a matter of power and how many people you can tear down with that power. And I've unfortunately seen some people in the profession that use the power and they wield that. And I think it's very negative for us. I think, like you mentioned, mentorship is so important. We need to build people up to be successful, not see them as a threat, but see them as a success story. So with my staff, I try to encourage things that we can build on their weaknesses, whether it's doing presentations or it's going to a new type of class so that they can get
Mhm.
stronger in a different field. So it's really about just building everybody up. And I've dealt with building teams, I've dealt with code enforcement, and one of the things that when I became the building manager, I sat down with my building inspectors and I said, what do you guys need to be successful? What would you guys like to see changed? And one of the first things they said was they wanted to stop wearing professional suits for inspections. They wanted something that's a little bit more user friendly out on the job site. So I said, that sounds perfect. So wear a polo shirt with jeans and work boots. And they
Right.
loved it. And you have to listen to your team and make sure that they're successful in the role that they play. So mentorship is critical for us. It's sharing knowledge, but I think it's just beneficial to our profession that we can help grow people, and it's not about titles.
Yeah, I think you highlighted one of the things is just being able to ask questions and through that inquiry being able to find solutions. Those people that are always engaged in that practice, it's always a good thing to talk to those people so that way you understand what they're doing and it's a simple change, right? Hey, can we change the uniform to be able to make it a little bit more productive? So when it's 110 degrees, I don't know about you, but here in the valley, sometimes it gets a little warm, and so we've talked about that too, and we're also trying to explore options. Now it's getting cooler, but we want to try to explore those options to make us a little bit more efficient and maybe not have the weather impact us as much as it does, because you get those heat related days, but it's always good to engage those folks and listen to them. I do think that that's one of the main things. I also, one of the skills that I think is undervalued a lot of times is empathy, being able to and have that, that ear to be able to talk to people and kind of understand their position and their perspective, I think is also essential to what we do as well. Uh, so you, as somebody that's part of that Code Enforcement Officers Foundation and Officer Safety, I'm imagining you guys also provide some other training in addition to that. And I would imagine you engage in some of those, as an instructor, engage in those. What do you think are some of the undervalued skills that we see, that may not get a lot of attention, for inspectors or code enforcement professionals?
Yeah, I think I mean the first thing before I get to like the skill set is just I think there's not that much information out there for inspectors to be aware of what's going on in terms of safety incidents. I think
Hmm.
because a lot of cases you can go a 20, 30-year career without coming across any really bad situation, but it's happening across the country. And
Yeah.
one of the oldest articles I found was from the 1980s, where a building inspector in LA ended up losing his eye because during inspection got into a confrontation with the property owner, and he had
Wow.
a tool and the inspector lost his eye because of a building inspection. So there's been a lot of incidents since then. And so I think it's just being aware of what's out there. And you kind of learn as you hear these stories, you start to think about that to yourself as you go out there, and to avoid complacency, you start to think, oh, you know, what I might encounter if somebody starts to get angry because I'm issuing a stop work order, or you're doing a red tag or a yellow tag. And so you have to just be mindful of that going into the job, but to avoid complacency. And one inspector I had the pleasure of meeting on the East Coast, he ended up creating a term for himself that he just always left a note in his car, and he said every inspection, meaning that every inspection is different, and you can't
Hmm.
be complacent and think that everything's going to be simple and easy, but you have to keep your head on a swivel. So with the classes and everything, I think the skill set that we would encourage is for people to be more aware and not be so robotic and think that, hey, every day is Groundhog's Day and everything's
Right.
going to be peachy clean for 30 years. I'm going to retire. You have to just be prepared for it. We're not saying build a bomb shelter and be scared, but we're just
Right.
saying be ready and be sharp. And that's why these classes that we teach about mindset, fear management, it just gets your brain thinking about how do you work yourself through different situations when your emotions are flaring up, maybe
Hmm.
somebody's yelling at you or they're upset. It just walks you through that mindset. So I think in this field we see a lot of training about codes and the
Hmm.
updates and different changes to codes and how we do inspections, but it doesn't really talk about us as a human being, how we have to work through emotions and
Yeah.
interpersonal skills. So I think that's really what our foundation is kind of pushing is you have to focus on yourself to be successful.
Yeah, I think that you hit on a very key term, and you almost took it out of my mouth because I was going to say it right when you did. Interpersonal skills, being able to deal with that one-on-one. I know that through my law enforcement career, it said verbal judo. I
Hmm.
don't necessarily say I want to hit you over the head with a word, but it's more of being able to talk through those things, articulate your position. It's always good to know the code. Don't get me wrong, and I have this conversation with my staff a lot of times. Is being able to know the code is always a good thing. But also too, you want to be able to talk to those people and to know the code, but then to explain the code are, I think, maybe two different things, or what they have. I think that people need to kind of be aware of that, and understand some of those challenges, and how do you explain it to those that aren't in the business. I had somebody, I was using a lot of acronyms the other day, and somebody called me out on it. And they said, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I said, oh, but it was a group of three. The other person knew, the third person didn't, kind of thing. So how do you talk through that and explain it in terms that everybody understands? And I think that that's a challenge. But interpersonal skills are one of those bigger challenges, I think, that many of us that could always show some improvement. So it's good to have avenues for I think that people call them soft skills, but I think they're essential skills to everything that we do. And some emotional intelligence. I think I need to brush up on that a bit. I know there's some books and texts out there, but I need to read some of those, just to kind of freshen up. I mean, all things that we pick up through maybe our schooling, but things that it never hurts to have some continuing education on. So,
Yeah, and I think with our classes, I think the verbal de-escalation was really great in how it teaches you to talk to and try to calm the situation down. And we actually had
hmm.
some agencies that sent permit techs and front counter staff
Oh,
just
that's a
to
good
that
idea.
one class.
Yep.
And it helps kind of just think about how you talk to people and you don't let your emotions flare up. And actually, one of the best trainings I had for that I thought was useful getting into code enforcement was when I was in the police department when I received training for hostage negotiations, and that was very helpful for me getting into code enforcement because a lot of times you're talking to people about getting into compliance, and
Hmm.
we need to work towards compliance. And what I learned in hostage negotiation is sometimes you give a pizza to get a hostage, or you do these different things. You make these agreements that they might want, and you try to work towards that final solution. And so
Right.
I learned a lot just thinking of it that way is how do you negotiate with people to be successful?
Yeah. Yeah. I had a friend of mine a long time ago when I first moved to California. We talked, and I consider him to be a great leader of his organization. And he said, I'm always trying to work towards yes. And how do I get to yes? How do I get, because I want your project to go just as badly as you do, but how do we get there? And I want to try to help you get there. And so I think having that positive outlook on how do we get you there, and so it's not this negative, always thinking about it's a negative, we're an enforcer, coming out and saying, how can I help you? I will say that has definitely helped him. I consider him to be a great friend, but also a great leader as well, and I think he gets a lot of good output from his team. So, and I try to emulate that a bit. So.
That's a good one. Yes.
Um, before we end, I always like to, because this is part of ICC. How do you engage in ICC? You've already taught, or how do you connect with ICC? You've already kind of talked about maybe the foundation, but how else do you connect with International Code Council?
Yeah, I think it's well, I think ICC does a great job. It really unifies the profession with not just the certification, the training, but all the different chapters and events and things that they put on. And so being a part of here where I'm at in LA County, I'm part of the LA Basin ICC chapter. And being a part of the foundation was unique because I got to work with a lot of ICC's executives to come into the MOU agreement and find ways that we could help each other. They now have me doing presentations for the chapter leadership academies, and so I
Okay.
do presentations through the Zoom platform to all the leaders across the country for that. And so I think it's been great networking with ICC. I have my certifications. I have many more on my wish list to get knocked out. So
Hmm.
it's both the education component and the networking, and the chapters play an important role regionally with that, and also just being able to go to different functions and events that ICC puts on. It's a great resource, and so it's things like this, what we're doing here, connecting members across different states and regions. I think is just very important to share that knowledge and help each other.
Yeah, I think that this was one of the things when I first became so I'm the treasurer of Region 1, and I've only been the treasurer now for less than a year. And one of the things that I talked with our leadership was, how do we connect and what do we do? We have meetings, but now that there's all these virtual platforms, it might be good to highlight, individuals that we never get to meet and network, and that's one of the things that I find these platforms to be essential for, because you and I are probably separated by 5 or 6 hours, and we may run into each other at a conference sometime, but how do we really connect? How do we build those relationships, and how do we share our experiences with others, and with this being a good opportunity, because not only are you and I connecting, but it also allows us to connect with others that might be listening or watching on Facebook, or listening to this on our podcast platform, or wherever. YouTube. We've got a YouTube channel, so they can watch this later too. And I will say that in this past year, I've been able to meet a lot of different people like yourself that have different perspectives that I think are essential to share. And I think that the more that we do that, the more we get out there and be able to connect, through the International Code Council, because I think that is the common thread that many of us across the country engage in. Whether or not it's ICC or NFPA, but we all, as code enforcement professionals, know and work with each other, and we all try to develop codes and standards that may provide a little bit higher degree of safety. And so being able to do that and being able to connect and network is always a good thing. So
Yeah, and I commend you. I think, this idea of having podcasts and talking through this kind of medium, not just because it's pandemic times and everything's
right.
virtual, but even if it wasn't, I think, like you said, doing it this way allows us to travel, 600 miles apart or whatnot, that
Yeah.
we can have these communications. So I think it's a great move for the region, and I think across the country is increase these communication styles so that we can share information and meet new people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I keep telling the board that so Hawaii is part of our region, I will sacrifice. I will go to Hawaii to talk to those folks over there, and we will meet and we'll do these videos one on one. But I don't think that the budget allows for it, unfortunately. So you get me virtually, but maybe someday, maybe I can start traveling a bit more and go to Hawaii and talk to those folks there. Maybe go to Southern California. Palm Springs, I'm sure, is beautiful this time of year. I'm sure Monrovia is too. But I don't think that there's quite money in the budget to support my travel yet. So,
True. It's
but
big goals,
I
though.
will, yeah, I will sacrifice. I will
Yeah.
sacrifice to go to Hawaii. I mean, it comes at a price, I'm sure, but that's okay. Uh,
Um,
well, Justin, it's been a great talk. How can people find you, find more information on the Code Enforcement Officers Safety Foundation? How can they find more information should they want to be able to get signed up, take some of those classes, and also maybe some more information on Casio and all those programs that they offer as well?
yeah. So the Code Enforcement Officer Safety Foundation, the website's codeofficersafety.org, and it's got a lot of resources on there. We track national statistics of murders and safety incidents. We have resources and handouts, and we also have information about our certification program. We also certify officer safety instructors, so people that are in our profession that want to teach other inspectors about safety. We certify those folks as well. And so everything is on our website for the certification program. We are now offering the certification program on demand, where you can watch recordings and get
Okay.
certified that way, or you could participate in live webinars. And also, we have information about the recent passing of SB 296. So we have press release on there, letters to human resources, and different documents on there. And KCO is kcocaceo.us to find out more about the state association. But the foundation is on Facebook and Instagram. They have accounts, and we share all types of information on there almost daily. And we also have a podcast and different resources on our website that people could follow. So definitely check us out. It's a growing resource, and I love to see how many subscribers we grow every day, because people are hearing about it and they want to take their safety seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you haven't checked those resources out, I will list them in our show notes. I'll list them on the YouTube channel as well. So you can, click those links and get some more information on those. I think that that's going to be a good thing to do, especially with some of the changes that we're seeing throughout the industry. Justin, I really do appreciate your time. And if anybody has, I'm gonna look. Let me check looks like we've got a couple people watching, but no additional questions or comments. So apparently, I've asked everything that I possibly could ask today. But like I mentioned, if anybody's listening right now or watching, should you have any questions or comments, or know of anybody else we should showcase on this platform, please let me know. I'm always looking for more people. Sometimes I'm a used car salesman. I'm out there selling it hard just to try to get more people involved and be able to talk to more people, because I do think that this is a valuable tool, and it gives us a good opportunity to network and really close that gap of distance between all of us. And so, but Justin, I really do appreciate your time. I know things are busy right now, and to be able to take an hour out of your day to talk to me, it's very much appreciated. So again, I thank you, and I thank everybody for watching, and hopefully you enjoyed, and have a great rest of your day.
It's been a pleasure, Tim. Nice meeting you, and great podcast, and you're doing great things for the region. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Justin.
I'll see you.